Starting.
I'm fine.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a delight. It's not only an honor and a simple pleasure, it is a delight, I'd rather say, to welcome once more our dear Professor Diane Edelman of Villanova University, Charles Widger School of Law. Um, it's not her first time within the framework of our transatlantic legal lectures, and therefore it's always great to welcome her again here in this context. Professor Edelman was educated, among other, at the Brooklyn Law School, and she achieved her Juris Doctor there. Uh, Before that, she also achieved an AB in Near Eastern Studies at Princeton University, and just to name a few elements. So she has also had a considerable wealth of bar admissions in her uh, professional life so far, not to mention the plethora of panels. And to be honest, we met for the very first time at a SEALS conference several years before. And as you can see, this um, first meeting was a very fruitful one, because ever since we have had the special pleasure and honor, as I said, to welcome you again in the context of these transatlantic legal lectures. And I'm not gonna even bother try to mention the plethora of your publications. I'd rather say, dear ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, our dear Professor Edelman, please enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Professor Parashu. And I have to say, I don't know whether I will be able to live up to that introduction, but I will try. I will tell you that today and for the next few months, I am wearing two hats, although you don't see any of them. Um, I direct international programs and teach legal writing at Villanova Law School outside of Philadelphia, home of Rocky, as what people usually think of, or they think of the Villanova basketball team. But right now, I am also the visiting director of international programs at my alma mater, Brooklyn Law School. So I am a little bit crazier than usual, but hopefully in a good way. Villanova has only international programs for Villanova students who go away. And Brooklyn has international programs for students coming in from abroad, as well as some exchange programs. So I hope that by the end of this academic year, I will have a lot of knowledge rather than having mixed up my knowledge altogether. Um, I will also be touching on some types of international programs and things today, but not all. And just in terms of me still learning more about some of them. But I love to connect with people, as you might gather from what Professor Parashu said. And I can happily say that after meeting at SEALS 3 or so years ago, where I also met Professor Melanie Reed, who was then creating a multi-country online course in comparative law from where she teaches in Tennessee with students and professors and others from the former Yugoslavia and from other parts of the world, that she and I finally met in person at SEALS last year. So this is a wonderful organization for meeting and making new friends. And I can only say that I hope that we all get to meet in person um, at some point in time. I'm going to pull up my slides and feel free. I think I'll see a question if it goes in the chat, but there will be, I don't have a huge number of slides, so there will be opportunities to chat afterward. I also am happy to communicate by email, by phone, by Zoom, and I will also send the slides plus the linked documents. The links are in the slides um, that I hope to share. So here goes. Let me hope that I can technologically do this. And where are my slides? One moment. They're hiding. I just need to pull them up again. It'll just take me a moment. Okay, now I just need to share this. So one more sec. Okay, and let me just put this in the correct view. Can you see my slides now? Oh my gosh, this is nothing short of a miracle. Okay, well, thank you so much. And as you can see, the topic is about developing joint degrees between US law schools and non US law schools. I do try to avoid foreign and abroad and all that because what's foreign and abroad depends on where we are. And I don't think it should depend on me being in the US or you all being in other countries at all. So, the first topic, I am just obsessed with international legal education. It's a passion of mine. And the fascinating thing for me right now is that at Villanova, right now, I have 4 students abroad, one in Austria, 2 in the Netherlands, and one in Britain. Here at Brooklyn Law School, there are a dozen international LLM students from all over, from the Middle East, from Asia, from Africa, from South America, from Europe. And so I'm getting quite a cultural education even though I can only communicate with my Villanova students generally by Zoom or email, I have my dozen Brooklyn students coming in to tell me about their wishes and their studies, their passions for human rights, for business law, intellectual property. So it's a real educational experience for I understand some of you out there are students. Just know that you bring us incredible education as well as what we hope to bring to you. So starting ahead, then, what I wanted to talk about is, why bother with international education and joint degrees? Well, basically, again, if you think of us professors as students too, it allows you all as students and those of us who are professors to learn from another. We have different systems of law. We have Islamic law, we have common law, we have civil law. And if we study only what is offered or present in our legal systems, we miss out, especially if we have a client who has needs abroad. So it's really important for us to learn about different cultures of how people behave, how they say thank you, what they mean by different physical behavior and words that they use, as well as about their legal cultures. And at the bottom, of course, is the most practical thing, which is let's say you are practicing right now in Greece, in Germany, in Spain, elsewhere, and you have a client who wants to carry out a business transaction in another country, or unfortunately, a client who may have been arrested or or was the victim of a crime elsewhere, a client who's involved with human rights and advocating for human rights, a client who wants to adopt a child from abroad. And it's a huge right now, the concern with immigration and travel. We have travel concerns because of COVID, because uh, of war and peace and conflict situations, and the complicated immigration status of visitors and those who want to become immigrants in different countries. It's incredibly complicated. And these are all things that learning about other legal standards and rules can help us with. So I would suggest there's probably a million more topics you could come up with. So the first steps in taking a look at what kind of program to develop is going to be what are your school's resources? In other words, can do you do you have a faculty person who can administer any international program? What would the cost be? Is it instead of some of their teaching load or is it in addition? Um, Are there sponsors? Are there alumni who say, I would love to have my name on the such and such university international scholars program? So I would like to donate $1 million or £1 million, or whatever to your school. There are alumni like that out there. Maybe they're a little more hidden than they used to be, but there are some. Or someone who says, I love the business law courses your law school teaches, but I would love to help endow or help to find those who might fund a public interest type program at your school where you sponsor some of your students to go abroad and do public interest legal work or legal studies, or where you host some of those students for a semester or a year. So those things are important to consider, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Determining what type of program your school wants to develop is important, of course. One of the easiest things to, and these again, you'll hear a lot about this from me from a US point of view. And of course, the issue would be for you to flip the stages and use the same criteria to consider or suggest other criteria that might be used for developing these kinds of programs. Often a summer program is the easiest thing to do. For example, if you want to attract students from abroad, offer a robust summer program that just has a handful of courses, maybe 4 courses or 6 courses. Determine what subjects to teach, who will teach them, and how you will offer credits. And that's where a school from abroad might have to say, well, let me see how many hours you're meeting per week, or what kind of reading you do per week, or how many hours of reading to determine what you could develop. But a summer program is something that can often stand alone. You don't have to worry about the academic year. And you can have students from all over the world. You can have particular partner schools. And we'll talk about regulations in a few minutes too. A semester program. Suppose, and I don't mean a semester degree or anything like that, or that would be impossible to do, but a semester of studies at your institution. For example, would it be a concentration in intellectual property law courses? Or is there something very special about where your school is located near, for example, the center of government in your country, where you could have some sort of a special semester focusing on the law there? Or do you want to have something year long or a degree? And again, here I am talking about you all setting up something at home, at your home institution. But part of the topic of this question is setting up um, degrees between two schools. So it's all related. And hopefully this will come together as I continue to speak. Um, but of course, one of the big things to do is to look at regulations. I know that your law schools are all regulated and approved by certain government or EU or other entities, just as our law schools have to be approved by the American Bar Association or ABA. And it probably you would need to start with looking at those regulations and seeing in particular which ones relate to setting up a program or a dual degree program with another country, a law school in another country. And so, of course, what governs your possible partner school? If you are in Greece and the other program is in Spain, are you regulated all by the same entity, or are there any local or other governmental or non-governmental entities that have a say in designing your legal structure? And then partner schools. Where do you want to start? I mean, personally, I think that Fiji would be really terrific right now, especially with how cold it has been in Philadelphia and New York. However, I don't know that there's a law school there. I do know there's many other exotic places, but the question is what schools are available? And I'll talk about specific schools in the next slide too, but what schools are available and how are they regulated as well? So you have to look at both sides really. Or if it's difficult, look at only your regulations and then contact someone, whether it's me to talk about the ABA, someone else to talk about EU regulations, or that sort of thing. And then what do you look for in a partner? So, of course, a school with a great reputation. And as you know, our law schools are all over the place. We have about 190-ish law schools here accredited by the ABA. There's all sorts of fuss with the US News and World Report, which for years has ranked law schools by specialty and by overall teaching ability, etc. It does actually drive people at law schools crazy. And right now, law schools do not know what to do about this. I've been to a number of meetings online and in person already where law schools are saying, no, we're not going to participate. But oh no, what's going to happen to us because of this? So propose to you that things other than the US News and World Report would be how you know of the reputation. If you hear that the school is Harvard, I don't think you need to look up anything further about it. Hopefully, if you heard that it was Villanova or Brooklyn, you wouldn't either, but you may not know as many things about our schools. But you know from your role in the academic community. And look at what the school specializes in. For example, if you want to develop a student, a program which has a really great chance of engaging students or getting students opportunities in the entertainment business, you might want to connect with the law school in Los Angeles. It's something that makes great sense. If you wanted to develop a program that focuses on business law, of course, New York would be terrific, and Philadelphia also. If you wanted to deal with maritime issues, you might want to go to Florida or another state with a significant maritime industry. But there's all sorts of choices you can make with that and through research and connecting. You want a partner school that's enthusiastic and that has the resources to work with you. In other words, they don't just say, sure, you come up with everything and let us know. However, it is perfectly legitimate for the partner school to say, what have you given thought to? What do you think you want to do with our school? And for you to be prepared to lay out either an outline or, for example, and to have a correspondence back and forth, meetings on Zoom and that sort of thing to determine exactly what it is that you want to create from this program. Desirable location, again, Fiji sounds great, but it may not be the most practical. Do you want your program to be somewhere in Europe? Do you want it to be somewhere in the US? And if so, how accessible do you need it to be travel wise? Should it be in a transportation hub like Chicago or New York or LA or Atlanta? Or would you like to expose students to a different environment altogether? Should your program be at one of the law schools in Oregon, which is very totally different than these big uh, business hub cities, but has incredible environmental law offerings and that sort of thing. And what can I say is the best thing to do is word of mouth and examining websites to get ideas of what these schools are and by conversation that we can have today. So um, desirable location may really depend. Was there a question? No, no question yet. Okay. Ability to travel. How easy is it for students and faculty to get back and forth? For example, just for regular travel at the intervals of vacation or getting to and getting from the program. How about if you want to encourage field trips? Being in a city like Washington offers you all kinds of opportunities and many other cities as well. But you want to be able to get in and out of that city. And what if there is an emergency at home, a health emergency, a political emergency, or whatever? You may be able to sell your program to more students and faculty if you are in or near a major city. Now, there are plenty of law schools outside of major cities, but within an hour or so that might be great for you as well, or you might want something altogether. Health and safety issues. We all know what that's been like the past couple of years. Um, our Villanova, when I say our, I have to be specific that it's Villanova, not Brooklyn. But at Villanova, for example, in sending schools abroad, we had to check our Department of State warning levels and make sure any place a student wanted to go was underneath or level 2 or less. We needed to make sure that there was no political crisis going on for the moment in that country as well. And I would imagine that you have to do the same kinds of things. So that's going to vary, but I would say putting all of this into a checklist is a great idea. Um, okay. Um, and by the way, I see that my footnote here has the wrong date. I will change that before I send them to you. But the slides are otherwise all different. How in the world do you find partners abroad? Well, I would say that this ELPIS organization is a great way. For example, if you were all just on um, the phone or Zoom together, one of you might say, "Oh, I did work with Melanie Reed at Duncan Law School in Tennessee, and absolutely you should try to do this with her." Or that Diane Edelman, she's just totally awesome. So try and track her down for something at Villanova or Brooklyn. Notice that I've been taking my comedy classes lately. Um, but in any event, start at home. Start with who you know and who your colleagues know. You know that one of the other folks involved with ELPIS here has just had an absolutely fantastic experience taking students to a certain place, because that's an option too. Taking students on an embedded experience. You're teaching international criminal law. Well, you're teaching it in the classroom, but for a week, maybe 2 weeks, you take them to The Hague and you visit the International Criminal Court. You sit in on hearings, you meet with practitioners, you meet with prosecutors, um, other folks in the justice system. So that's yet another type of thing to consider, which also really turns students on. It whets their appetite. And for those of you in Europe, it is so much, I would think, an easier thing to do than those of us in the States where, you know, our nearest countries are Canada and Mexico, and they're not very nearby for many of us. Um, so that's something to do as well. But find your partner schools starting at home, network at conferences or meetings like this. And there are many, many, many listservs to be involved with. It's actually overwhelming. There's the International Association of Law Schools. There's the American Association of Law Schools. There is SEALS, the conference in July and August in the southeastern U.S. generally. Um, there is ILIAC, the International Legal Education Abroad Conference, which takes place online based out of Washington, D.C. in March. And I can't even count for you how many people I know of who have connected these ways and developed programs as a result. The other is bar associations. At least, for example, I can't speak to your bar associations abroad, but for example, Philadelphia, my main city where I'm from, and then New York, my adopted and former city. In the States, we have the American Bar Association, but also every state and every city, every major city, and then some others have their own bar association. So it's just an incredibly complicated network of folks that you can communicate with. Now, speaking for New York and Philadelphia, just the cities, there are very active city bar associations. Now, I can speak better to Philly right now, but the Philadelphia Bar Association has 12,000 members who are lawyers or academics, and it has, I don't know how many sections, but one of them is an international law section. This year, for example, we hope to be having a special celebration of the 20th anniversary of the International Criminal Court, featuring folks who have worked there. I mean, you wouldn't think of that necessarily as happening in Philadelphia, but we get international lawyers from all over to be involved with this. And the New York Bar Association, both the city and the state, have international law sections as well. So it's another great way to ask people affiliated with those organizations, where do you think we should partner up? Where do you at this law firm in New York City, where do you get your best international lawyers from? In other words, could they be from my home university in Greece, in Poland, in Germany, in Spain, or should we partner up and send students to another school abroad? I think that these are the best ways of getting some advice. Types of programs that I want to suggest you consider: summer, exchange, semester, year long, degree programs, and the newest certificate programs. So, summer programs typically allow US students to earn credits toward their degree abroad. The example I'll give you, because I was forced to teach in Italy for 10 summers at Villanova. It's tough when you have to do that. We offered a program where students could earn up to 6 credits, which is as much as they were permitted to under the ABA, at our program in Rome. We were at one school for 1 year and another host school for the other 9 because of construction and things at the first school. But you can do a million things. You all can be the host of a program where you teach all of the courses, or where you co-teach with the school coming from the US. We did a combination of things. We co-hosted our program in Rome with another US law school. And so we taught 2 of the courses, they taught 2 of the courses, but we had guest speakers locally. And we could have arranged to have co-teaching as well. So that's a common type of structure. And I'll talk about things to think about in a couple slides from now. Exchange programs. That's one where you want to send, this is often the financially best choice for schools, when you want to send 5 of your students to a school abroad and have 5 students in exchange. Often law schools do that without spending extra money. In other words, the law student pays their own tuition. And because you have 5 students from this school and 5 from this, switching, everyone maintains, retains the tuition paid by all of those students. Now, in terms of expense, though, you have to think about the expense for, what will you subsidize? Will you help the students pay their expenses? Will financial aid or scholarships or fellowships assist with that? And also, what about your faculty? Your faculty, are you paying for them? Are you helping them bring their families over? Are you uh, are you giving them, having them do this instead of a sabbatical, or are you doing this instead of teaching for a semester, that sort of thing? And what benefits will it bring your school? Is it going to give a chance, if you have, for example, a fantastic intellectual property scholar on your faculty, will that person teaching in your summer program, or going as a visiting professor, show off your school and its talents, or will the cost outweigh the benefits? I think often the benefits outweigh the cost. And I know I'm mixing program ideas here of the exchanges, but you can do student exchanges that can be almost a net zero. But again, you have to think about some of these other things. They can be for a year or a semester. And I know that here I will be learning more that I'm happy to share with you as I proceed along here at Brooklyn, because they do have a handful, a small number of exchanges each year. Now, another thing is that where you can save an enormous amount of money, I mean, probably not spend much at all, is to host an LLM program. And I'll show you the link to a couple of Villanovas in a couple of minutes. But this is a program where it costs Villanova, for example, but we've had 40 some students go through this program where we permit students who qualify. That means they have to have fulfilled their graduation requirements, as well as have a certain grade point average. to spend a year abroad earning an LLM, which the ABA permits us to count toward their JD. So, for example, if I've taken all of my legal profession and skills, et cetera, courses, and I have a 3.0 or better, or if I had close to a 3.0 and the faculty gave me permission, like really close to a 3.0, then I could spend my third year abroad earning an LLM in intellectual property and human rights and international and European business law and a million other things. And I come back at the end of 3 to 3.5 years with 2 degrees. And maybe I'll even stay and sit for the bar in France or somewhere else. We have one student, for example, two or three students who went and did an LLM taught in French at one of the Sorbonne institutions. And one of them they both stayed to be admitted in France. And then one of them happened to have a great job of working with the Supreme Court of the Seychelles, which I thought sounded like a pretty fabulous place to be for a year or two. And now he's with a law firm in Paris. So we have students who've had this incredible opportunity. And what do they want to do? They want to talk to students currently at the school and say, this is so great, you should do it. They also, and this is what I think might appeal to you, they want to say to your school, hey, school, keep this program up. This is an incredible opportunity for your students. So, for example, well, how do you all fit in here? Well, here, you all could become host schools and host American students from a partner school coming in. For example, if you have a specialized LLM in maritime law and human rights, business law, or whatever that's extremely well known, share that news around and see if you can host students. And it it really doesn't cost very much. It actually costs us, the sending school, more because if it's not an exchange, then we are basically losing the tuition for the year. But for the other 2 years that the students were at Villanova, we have their tuition. Hopefully, we have their incredible, grateful thanks and great donations in the future, or word about the school to say this opportunity changed my life. And I would tell you that of the 44 students who've gone abroad so far in this program, I think perhaps there was one who was disappointed and everyone else was thrilled. Um, we started with 5 different schools abroad, and now they've been up to about 14 schools abroad because a student will come in and say, oh, but can I try this school? It's not on our list. But if the school is accredited by its home accrediting agency and it offers a kind of curriculum that we think would be valuable, we can add it to the list. We've done that so many times. This year, one of our students, for example, really wanted to get a master's in art law and found several of them, and we looked them over and checked criteria, and that's what she's off doing this year. Um, it's something, and I'm happy to talk to people who might want to arrange that kind of thing. So that to me it's a profitable program for you all hosting non-US students. But another thing to consider would be having something reciprocal. Another thing too, and I'm not sure of the qualifications for this yet, are certificate programs. For example, it's not a degree, but for example, let's say I do go to Warsaw and concentrate only in intellectual property courses during the spring semester because the school has some kind of certificate or acknowledgement of taking a lot of IP courses. And I could come home with a certificate in it. And many schools have that sort of information situation. So, I think that's another great idea. Here I can show you a couple of links. So, for example, these are a couple of things that you could take a peek at for uh, seeing how we set up some of these websites. And again, you may very well all do this already. So this may be repetitive, but let's see if I can get this to share properly. Let me stop the share for a moment and share a different screen. Okay, and you should be able to see a Villanova screen. This is actually shocking that I can do this. And you can still see it? Great. Okay. So if I can scroll down here, you'll see we have, of course, our snazzy London picture. Um, and then, in an introduction, you all know how to do these pitches. In today's world, attorneys need to know the global legal environment. I mean, all of us can say that. And what we do is, we have a handful of links below. So, for example, the course of study tells you that the students have to complete their first 2 years at Villanova, and then they can possibly do this. Now, the funny thing is, it's going to list 5 partner schools: Edinburgh, Leiden, Birkbeck in London, Singapore, and Cambridge. I'm sorry, Singapore and City University of Hong Kong. But if you see squished into this last paragraph, we have Cambridge, the Sorbonne, Kyushu and Keio in Japan, and ISDE in Madrid. And there's also several others this year. Someone is in York, someone is at Vienna. Um, it all depends on what the students request. I can tell you that if you take a look at Edinburgh and Leiden, they have among the most LLM programs. And, we approved a number of them, but generally, if a student wants to go to another, they can do so. Um, Let me open up the Brooklyn one for you, which hopefully will, can you see that now? The colorful red and giant COVID warning there. Um, so, oops. Okay. So the Brooklyn website, sorry, I'm just going back and forth between these two. This will show you an application process and all sorts of webinars and that sort of thing. And of course, the students are only having fun being out on a boat here. Twilight sail for international trained lawyers. That's always a great picture to have in there. Admission criteria. And another important thing, lots of students, if you partner with a US school, they want to take the New York bar exam. To many international students, New York is it. And in order to take the New York bar exam, they only have to take a handful of specific courses, maybe 3 specific courses, one in legal ethics, one in the American legal system, and one in legal writing and communication for law students, and a certain number of total credits. But they do get prepared to take it. The other thing that the New York bar requires for admission is a certain number of hours of pro bono work. And so programs are designed to offer that kind of information. So I have these links in the main slides so that you can see them. Let me see if I can reshare. One second. While I pause, any questions so far? Nope. Okay. Let me reshare the correct slides then. Okay, great. So this slide does have the links to those two, which you can certainly explore. And you can pick, all of you, undoubtedly, considering what you do, have contacts at other law schools in the States. Pull them up. See if the school that you communicate with in St. Louis, for example, if you were looking at St. Louis University, there it is in Missouri, right in the middle of the US. They have terrific international programs. You might not guess it otherwise. Chicago, you're going to find a ton of things at University of Chicago and Northwestern. So there are obvious places and there are some that are less obvious. And you might come across a school where you say, you know, our interests are just like theirs. We're really interested um, in environmental law. We have among the best environmental law programs in Europe. Let's find a school that has fantastic environmental law opportunities. Okay, let me advance. Hopefully it will advance. Okay. So the ABA, um, how many of you have been dealing with ABA requirements ever? Anybody? Well, there's just a few people whose faces I can see anyhow. Okay, the American Bar Association is, of course, the entity that regulates our programs, whether it's our JD program, any aspect of finance, of anything else that affects US law schools. And there are sections within the ABA, and the one we're most concerned with is the section on legal education. Within the section on legal education, there's regulations about international legal education. And so one of the things that I've given you a link to, and I'm going to show you actually on a slide instead of going back and forth, but of course I'll send these to you right afterward, um, are links about international legal education. And I've started to mention that to you, but of course we have to count hours and do all sorts of things to make a program that fits. So section standard 307 of the many paged standards on legal education talks to us about studies, activities, and field placements outside the US. A law school can grant study credit for study outside the US that meets the requirements of the criteria. There can be credit for field placements. Um, and this is somewhat complicated. It says a school can give up to 2/3 of the credits required for study outside of the US, provided the credits are obtained in a program sponsored by an ABA approved law school, um, which seems to conflict a bit with the next one, which says it can give a maximum of 1/3 of the credits required for the JD for any combination of student participation in study outside the US and courses completed um, uh, completed at a law school in accordance with another standard. I'm not going to pull up all million standards today. However, essentially, the more international it is, or the more non-US it is, the more regulation there is. And as you can see, the credits can't exceed 2/3 of the total credits required for the JD. Now, the JDs typically require 90 or so semester credit hours in the US, and that varies from school to school. And also, if the school has quarters instead of semesters, or has a different way of counting its minutes and that sort of thing. But this is something where we won't go into the nitty gritty of it, because you just have to sit. You don't need to sit with a calculator, but you need to sit there and make a lot of notes about it. But this is very important. A student participating in study outside the US must have successfully completed sufficient prerequisites or contemporaneously received sufficient training to assure the quality of the student educational experience, which is basically between studying at my school and yours. They have to fulfill their graduation requirements, and that's pretty much how that is set. And there's a final one. For purposes of this standard, a course including only a brief visit about the out of, outside the US is not considered study outside the US. Now, what does that mean? That's a great thing. That means I don't have to, if I want to take students over spring break to Spain to visit your law school, I don't need to get special ABA permission to do that. I need to get my faculty's permission, and you all probably need to get your faculty's permission or the dean's permission. But essentially, I can arrange one of these, as we call them, embedded visits, and we can come over to you and visit your school and your court system and all that. And the cost to you is something of, we'll have some refreshments, we'll arrange for some transportation and some study space while you're here, that sort of thing. And I have to tell you, nowadays too, schools, including Villanova, are considering having externships abroad, where we partner with a school abroad to host us, and we supervise our own students, and while they're doing externships, practical experiential education at a pro bono organization or at a business that's interested in student training students and that sort of thing. So there is no end to the way you can be creative with this. Um, and again, this developing the joint degrees between US. Let me focus a little bit more on that for a moment too, because that is, of course, our title. And that is, you think, well, what I've said is well and fine, but it's about giving US students an opportunity to come here and study here in Europe with us. What if we want to do something abroad? Well, there's a number of things. And there's, of course, a whole checklist that I could create for you of things to consider. But among them are some of the things from these slides today. Finding a great partner that has these 6 criteria, considering expenses, etc. But let's say you wanted to offer that JD, like a JD LLM equivalent. Your students are in law school ranging from maybe 3 to 5 years, often undergraduate degrees rather than graduate degrees. You have to just examine the structure that they fit into. But suppose you want to create a situation where a school, your school wants to have a year abroad at another law school. I don't think it should be too difficult to do. You'd need to check your regulations, and I think you would need or want to have the same requirement that your students complete your school's graduation requirements before the year abroad, so it doesn't just fall through the cracks and then they're complaining or you have to make some special arrangement. But you want them to come, let's say, to Philadelphia, to Villanova, or to New York, to Brooklyn for their 3rd year and get a master's degree. So, first of all, you'd find at Villanova, the only master's we have, LLM, is in tax. You'd find here at Brooklyn that they have an LLM for international students. You'd find at some other schools that they have a zillion LLM programs. And you would just connect with the people supervising those programs, whom you could find online. Or if the school didn't have something, but you were absolutely crazy about going to American University has plenty also, but you were crazy about having students going to a law school in the States where they didn't have a program. Talk to your contact there, who you would probably have if you really wanted students to go there, and say, we'd like to set this up. We'd like our students to come to your school in Florida for a year, earn a master's in law that we could count toward their degree back home in Portugal and Spain, wherever. And of course, you check and see what your authorities required and see, have them check what they'd be able to do. They don't need to create a whole new curriculum to give your students a JD. They would need, I mean, an LLM. They might need to create those things. They'd have to set aside a section in legal profession or professional responsibility or ethics, whatever they call that, and perhaps the skills courses of fundamentals of the American legal system and legal writing and research for international students. But the school might have that already. And they could create an LLM program that you could send your students to after they finish their first degree in law at your school or instead of their final year. So that again would depend on your regulatory authorities and on what you can build. So that's an idea I wanted to recommend. In here, I don't think we need to click deeply on this. This is the section 307, which I sent to you before, has the criteria for programs offered outside by the US. These used to be broken down into so many different separate sections. You had to go to a different section to deal with semester, to deal with year long, to deal with all kinds of other programs. Now it's all contained here, and it's lengthy, but it's much better put together. Another one is foreign programs. And if you were to click on this link, it would show you the list of currently approved programs by the ABA. And so my final slide, of course, is the stay in touch one, but I'm happy to have discussion about these things here. Again, I feel as though this was sort of like a preliminary look at this subject because again, it doesn't deeply examine exchanges and that sort of thing, but hopefully it will give you the fundamental ideas about you know, the strategy for setting up a program. Again, you want it to be financially and reputationally great for your school. I can tell you that a year ago, when I was pitching the Villanova LLM to our current students, which, you know, it's a great and fun thing to do. We had 3 students abroad, one at IE Law School in Spain, one at one of the Paris schools that taught in English, and the third might have been in Switzerland, I'm not sure, but they all zoomed in together. And so it was such a treat, and they were all so excited about their programs, and they were already there for more than half a year. So they were settled in, broken in, that sort of thing. And the 3 of them spoke at a session I had with maybe 15, 20 law students. And we never have that many go abroad each year, but they spoke of, you know, such joy and also the ability to work out problems. You know, did you have a problem with travel? Did you have any difficulties with course selection or anything like that? But having them come into your classroom is always amazing. And that when I've spoken with you folks before at another session, I know I talked about guest speakers because I feel when you have a guest speaker talk about what you think is really important, it's just like having someone else's parent tell your kids what you think is important. And I love doing that. But here, having students who have been so happy with an international program talk about how great it is really one of the best things you can do. And they were all very sincere about it. The one who went to Spain was so thrilled. He actually came back to Villanova to walk at his graduation, then went back to Spain to um, to take his finals, or to finish, go to his graduation ceremony there. And there's little things like that, like working out when they get their degree. We require them to complete everything at their school abroad before they get their Villanova degree. So if they finish in April or May, when we give out our degree, that's great. If they're going to finish in the fall, then they get their Villanova degree in the fall after they complete their degree abroad. So anyhow, I will be quiet now, and hopefully I gave you some helpful information, and I'm happy to follow up with both sending more and, you know, sending more along.
Well, thank you warmly for this, as always, very interesting presentation. I see now that Professor Vasco is with us, so it's not my place to continue. I leave you the
Yes,
floor,
it
of
is.
course.
It is. You're
Ah,
great. You are doing a great job. Hello, everybody. I was a little bit late in the beginning, so I'm sorry for that. But I listened to everything from when you begin your speech. It was really very interesting. And I think we should talk because we have lots of possibilities for future cooperation. In the Alps, we have a master program with Hanover, with Lisbon, with Rouen, and with Fribourg, and also with Lithuania, University in Lithuania. So we have an experience of this kind of things. And when you talk about the figures, they're a little bit different because you say, well, we have 5 students abroad. In this moment, I have 200 students abroad in the faculty. And next semester, also 200 students. So the Erasmus program created all over Europe possibilities of communication.
yes.
But now we have another possibility also integrated in Erasmus, which is integrated with a kind of a program with foreign universities. So it's possible to arrange a special program, mainly in the fields, in the master degree, because when you talk about our bachelor degree, things are, the topics and the themes are completely different, and it's difficult in faculties not like the German ones, where having the degree is something that is got through a state's exam, an exam of state. But in our courses, in our curricula, where in each course the student gets a part of his degree, it's very complicated to do this kind of things with American universities. It's easier with European ones, but it's very difficult with American ones. But to do this in the level degree, in the master's degree, it's quite easy, because the duration of our master programs is, as far as I understood, bigger than yours. And in the end, the students need to write a thesis. As a matter of fact, I know that in the States, you write during the whole time, and it's a very intensive program, but it can be short, because I've seen from other faculties that you can do in one semester or in 1 year the whole program, the whole master program.
Right.
And if you look at our master program, our ELPIS master program, it is planned for 2.5 years, 2 years of lectures in the home faculty and abroad, and then half year to do a thesis. But since we have that program, this kind of programs, like our ELPIS, it's easy to have the students one semester in the States, and then the other part of the program in Europe. And in the end, he must do a thesis. And if we think about degrees that can be combined, the student can go to the States, and after a semester, he can get a degree, and probably not immediately, but when it comes to Germany, to Portugal, to France, wherever, you can combine both degrees, and for the students that can be something very attractive, let us say. So I think in that level, in the master level, Friedrich will tell you afterwards, but I think it's easy to organize something, even with our present structure of the office, because our office students just need to be one semester at home, at the home university. They can stay 1 year, but they just need to stay one semester. And they have 2 years, 4 semesters of courses. So to stay one semester in the States, it's for them a great opportunity, and they can do it quite well. Some of them are trying to organize their master program with American countries or Asian or so on. Some of our students go to Brazil, the Portuguese like it very much, but the French do it also, or can go to Asia or so on, and then come back and have their discussion of the thesis, the realization of the thesis, and then in some cases, it's the case of Portugal, having the discussion of the thesis. So I think we have very good opportunities for future cooperation. And now even because the problem, the students always say the biggest problem is the money, because in Europe, uh, university ship is or free or very cheap, and in the United States is not the same.
No.
But there are grants now in Erasmus for this kind of combinations, and we can apply to them. Uh, uh, ICM, it's an example of an Erasmus grant for that. We had this year, we had 2 years ago a grant to go to uh, 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 how is it? Where is Pat teaching to Louisiana to um, excuse me, help me.
New Orleans.
New Orleans, and we got in 2018 uh, uh, two scholarships for students and two for professors to New Orleans. This year we got one for Weeville and another one to Lincoln University. So it's not very difficult to apply for this kind of things, and the students can have a scholarship to be there 1 semester or 1 year.
That's great.
And so we need to discuss this kind of things, because we have lots of opportunities that we should combine and should try and organize our ELPIS program even in a more international basis than it has already.
And I know that when there is an exchange, often the schools can just exchange one for the other. With ours, where the students are just going out to a school abroad,
Yeah.
they can use their US financial aid. But Villanova winds up, you know, paying, in a way losing tuition, but in the same way, providing an opportunity that gets the student there the first couple of years, and they could always take in a visitor that year. So it's a matter of weighing the pluses and minuses also. But yeah, it would be great to have um, a great scholarship fund out there that says, oh, you want to go to Portugal for the year, turn the LLM, here you go. So who knows?
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, you don't lose the tuitions, because the rule in the Erasmus is that the student pays the tuitions at his own faculty. So he can pay the tuitions in the United States and being studying in Portugal or in France or in German, because it will be free for them, or with it's not completely free, our master, but there's no comparison among the prices you pay and the prices you pay at the United States. So
Right.
that's not a problem for
Right.
us, because
I,
they pay the tuitions at their home. The fees are
right.
paid at the home university, so
That's
it can
great.
help. So we should discuss this kind of things. Don't you agree, Friedrich and Demetrius, to organize also in our program? In the beginning, we were sponsored by Erasmus Mundus, and we had China, Bangkok, Brazil, and other kinds of opportunities with those faculties that were subsidized by the EU. Now we are no longer members of sponsored by the Erasmus Mundus program, but there are still some programs integrated in the Erasmus that we can use to go to the United States. And I believe it's not complicated to organize something like that. And I think we should do it.
And the other thing is that the students, they just appreciate it so much. It changes their lives. It exposes
Yeah.
them to things they never thought could affect them or their clients. It's a really fantastic experience. Every single, as I told you, maybe 1 out of 44 was grumpy, but and that's not to say some didn't have difficulties. One had a child during a year abroad. One had a visa problem, had to come back at the beginning and get the visa straightened out. Um, Nobody wound up in any legal situations, but it was a regular life experience, but really one that they have treasured. And I think having those video clips and little essays or blurbs about how fabulous this experience was is something we can all use to say, you know, give this a try. It's a fantastic
Yeah,
experience.
I agree. We must keep in touch.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely agree too. Wouldn't it be a good idea to sort of try and look for the different programs that there are in terms of funding and trying to establish some sort of best practice examples that we've got within our network and to share the experience and the opportunities that there are out there, in order to find some sort of structured approach to this funding question. Since I think that we've got such a lot of different and very good ideas in terms of cooperation and in terms of cooperative classes and so on. But when it comes to bring students together and bring students abroad, it's normally a question of funding, and things are extremely difficult in terms of administration and all that. And since, well, no one of us is really, well, at least I'm not a very skillful person as far as organizing things is concerned, like finding out how to deal with the administration and all that. Wouldn't it be a good idea to sort of have some, well, to have some sort of cooperative approach to that, to find the means and the websites and the different application forms and all that, and put it together and for example, put it on our ELPIS website so that everyone who's interested can have access to these funding questions.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing as I thought about all this. I mean, I wouldn't want to expect you all to go and look at 50 different states, law school rules, for example, or to examine 50 different states and see what LLM programs that are out there. There are some collections of that information on the ABA website. They're not as easy to find as they used to be, but I'm more than happy to put together some of those links, and that will tell you where there are already programs, though it won't give you new ideas specifically. But I think that one of the things, for example, that Melanie Reed and I co-chair an ABA committee called the International Legal Education and Specialist Certification Committee, and it meets once a month. And I think, and the attendees are professors generally from U.S. law schools who are interested in international legal education. I know we'd be happy to have any of you speak at that, and you may have done that in the past, or I may have had Melanie do that a couple of years ago too. I've lost track. And the other thing is this the Association of American Law Schools section on global engagement. It's meant to engage globally. And there are people doing all kinds of programs right now. For example, a private practice attorney in New York who is actively working on helping to train women and other lawyers from Afghanistan so they can come to the States and practice law, get out of tough situations and move ahead and help others. I mean, there's so much, I completely agree with you. There's so much going on everywhere. How do we gather it up? And maybe, we can have a subcommittee or something like that that does some of that.
May I ask another question, since I'm afraid I didn't quite get it. You were talking about certificates, programs with certificates, and I didn't quite get it. Did you recommend them, or did you rather discourage us from doing stuff like that?
Neither. I think that, so for example, a semester program, let's say your school currently offers a semester or a concentration in corporate law or in German intellectual property or something like this, and someone could complete those courses within a semester. You know, perhaps your school could say, okay, let's call this a certificate, and we'll give it to our students as well as students from abroad. And we have this now with specializations, so that if you, and I can find that link and send it along afterward. I'll send to Professor Parashu the fixed slides and a link to the specializations, for example, that we do. And I know that Brooklyn has specializations in its LLMs, and you can see it's just a matter of saying, okay, take 5 courses in this area, take 6 courses in this area.
Yes. That's very good.
And you all decide what they are.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, picking up that idea, excuse me.
I'm sorry, no, I was just wondering if the students that are in this room have any questions. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, it was a huge amount of information and extremely relevant information too. So there might be some questions out there.
We're smiling at all of you students.
Wow. Well, but the suggestion you made before, Friedrich, we could use it in our website. If Diana sends us the information, we can put it in the website, and that could inform the students of what happens abroad and the possibilities they have. And that could be the first step in order to combine our master programs and beginning to work together. It's not very difficult to do it. The information can be put in the website. We can make a section about the law schools in the US and put there all the information that the students need and that universities need. And then after knowing that and give the students publicity about it, we could try to choose every year some students to go abroad, and perhaps try also the scholarships of Erasmus, of ICM, that are, well, my experience from that ICM scholarships is that they are just for one student and one professor regularly, and they like to change the faculty every year. Mm-hmm. But since in Europe we are from all countries, and in the States, in Seoul, we have lots of universities. Maybe it can be a way of having each year a scholarship if we try with a different university every year. So, and I don't know why, but that's what happened in our regular relation with ICM. That's what's happened. We had once that scholarship for New Orleans, for Loyola New Orleans, then they stopped. Then last year they gave us one to Lincoln, to Louisville, which was last year, and now it's to Lincoln.
Right.
It's possible to change just one student, one professor, both sides. So your student, if he comes to Portugal or to Germany or to France, you also have a scholarship, like the professor that comes here for teaching and the one that goes there for teaching. So there are a scholarship given in reciprocity among scholars and students of one-to-one university in Europe and in the States. So, but perhaps we can play with that and also do applications in the faculties, because we can apply as an LPS master, but we can also apply in our own universities. And like this, we can multiply the places. And I think we should do it. And it's a great idea to use this background from SEALs in order to strengthen our relationships. I think it's very important.
Great. Well, I will send out information to this group about the ABA and the AALS, when there will be meetings also, so we can discuss these things. And I know there'd be other people interested in trying to help create this information chunk. I sit there and I think, for example, of our law librarians who are absolutely fantastic, who I still remember asking them once a question about something and getting 15 answers. And they just do an amazing job. So that's a great resource for finding this information as well. But I'll be happy. I think these are all great ideas. And I thank you for your patience with me, since I could only speak to some of these topics.
Oh, it's great. You made a wonderful job.
You're very kind.
No, that's not true.
But we all have passion about this subject. It's clear. And I hope that those of you who are students out there will be the same way. It can really enrich your careers and lives so much to study elsewhere, to learn about other laws. It's really, and make new friends.
Indeed.
So I will make the correction on these slides on the bottom line, and send this right to you. But I also will say that there's the links inside of it are to very helpful documents. Instead of sending them all, you can just click on them. If you have any difficulty, I can download them, but it shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you very much for
Thank you very much.
on the ABA questions, because although I had not had any direct contact with them, I always heard that they were extremely difficult to deal with.
Not necessarily.
If you
Hopefully.
know
When we had our summer program in Rome, which we had again for 10 years, I was the one who had to be in touch. And when we started our JDLLM program, and I found a person at the ABA who was still there. I did find one or two people at the ABA who in years have never returned my phone calls. I mean, and I could tell you exactly who they are, but I won't do it in public. But someone else was incredibly helpful to me, and I can email him today and say, can you clarify something? And he'll say, yeah, how have you been? And here's the clarification. So there's plenty of people with institutional knowledge who are really helpful and who are obsessed with this aspect of education the same way we are.
Wonderful. That's very good to hear. If someone is telling you that things are extremely difficult and so on, you build up some sort of fear, and you don't really want to touch it, and you know.
No, there's really nice people there. And also, I think that you might, if you haven't had, you probably have been exposed to the ABA ROLI, or Rule of Law Initiative, through Melanie or others. It is, I'll put a link in my email also. It is an ABA project where it's not Americans going out and trying to change the rule of law in different countries, even though the name may sound that way, but it's to engage in creative educational projects. For example, during I think that Melanie's course at Duncan with the students in Bosnia, etc., came out of that type of thing. But last year I also taught in Tashkent, Moldova, via an ABA project to teach about legal skills or some and other subjects. And it's very cool and fun and interesting to read about. It's been going on for about 30 years. So I'll send that information as well.
Great. Dimitris, since you were the first who began the session, you should close it too.
Well, that's very nice of yours. Well,
No.
you know, if dear ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, you know that I am Greek and I'm not exactly from Sparta, but you know those Spartan influences and anything which would have to do with laconic elements are very, very well, still very intriguing to me. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, and given the fact that my own day also started at 8 a.m. today.
Yes, and it is
I,
now 8:30 at night now?
yeah, well, exactly. So I'd like to thank once more warmly our dear Professor Edelman for
You're very welcome.
delivering one more of her very pleasant lectures in this framework. And as I also said before, if there are no further questions by our dear fellow participants, I'd like to thank you warmly for being here with us, and take good care of yourselves. Enjoy your night, or in your case, dear professor, enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. Good luck to all of you students on your exams, and you're lucky to have such kind and engaged professors as you have here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.